and welcome to the Knit and Grace podcast. This is episode 19. Hello and welcome back if you're a returning viewer. If you are new here, my name is Mia and I am the maker behind Knit and Grace. And today I bring you a monthly podcast episode. So this is where I sit down and share with you everything that I have been knitting on. So the things that I finished since the last episode, what I'm currently working on, and what I plan to work on over the next couple of months. And yeah, it has been a few months. I know that I kind of disappeared a little bit with very little warning. So it has been a few months since I filmed my last podcast episode. Usually these go out the first Sunday of every month. So I think I skipped 2 months maybe. And yeah, life has just gotten in the way. So here I am with a new episode for you all. So in terms of format, I'm going to do the traditional knitting podcast format as you all know me to sort of follow for these episodes. And as always, I will include timestamps in the description so you can go ahead and jump around. And yeah, I guess one of the main reasons too is that I do have a little bit of a life update to start with, sort of explain where I've been. And if you're not interested in that, you can skip that. And then I do have some channel updates in terms of what you can expect to see from me over the next few months, but that's going to come at the end of the podcast. So yeah, I guess if you are here and you are willing to stick around, go ahead and grab a cup of something cozy or, like me, an iced beverage because it is a little warm. And we are going to go ahead and get started with a life update today. So, life. Where have I been? It's been a couple months since I filmed a sit-down podcast or even sort of produced any video content for the channel because I don't only produce these sit-down podcasts, as you all know. And yeah, life has just gotten very, very hectic. I think that in my last episode, I mentioned that I was going to be doing a little bit of traveling toward the end of April into the beginning of May. And then you all know probably that I work in HR change management, and the current project that we're all working on kind of ramped up a lot and was planning on ramping up in May. So I did do traveling. I actually went out to Salt Lake City and I have a few things to show you all from that trip. But I went out to Salt Lake City for a work conference at the end of April into the beginning of May. And then the first full week of May, we had sort of an all-week on-site at work where we were going on every week. We were kind of locked in a conference room, project configuration, and all of that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, I think that is when toward the end of that second week, I think the traveling and then going in every day really started to take a toll on me physically. And I had to take a day off work and I just wasn't feeling very well physically. Then the following week in May, my husband had a medical emergency. And so this is like the second week in May. And at that point, you know, between dealing with my own physical health issues, his health issues, and everything else, my mental health also just started to strain there for a little bit, and I decided to step away from the channel and from Instagram. So I had posted an Instagram post letting everyone know that I was going to take the rest of the month off, and that's kind of what I was planning on doing. Just, I think I had released the first, I think I released, did I release a podcast in May? I don't remember. I may have released a podcast in May, but then I knew that, I had been planning on having a second episode, and that just didn't happen, and I just needed to step away, and I just thought, a few weeks to recuperate and whatnot. So I think as I got through that time period, it kind of became more apparent that I probably needed a little bit more time off. I also made the decision in that time frame to actually begin medication for ADHD. And so, yeah, so I think ADHD is something that I have suffered with for most of my life. And it wasn't really until recently that I really figured it was, it was more than just anxiety. Having been in treatment for anxiety for quite a few years, and then ultimately out of treatment for anxiety, my ADHD symptoms flared up. And I made the decision to start medication because it was really starting to affect my not only work life, or I should say, not only my normal day-to-day life, but also my work life. So I am in a project-based role. Luckily, I've never missed any deadlines, but I was really getting to that point where, the procrastination was setting in a lot. My memory was shot. I had zero short-term memory there for a while, and so I knew that I had to take some steps to kind of rectify that. And so I spoke with my GP, and we decided to start medication, and I have been on medication since the end of May, I want to say. So it's been like 2 full months, or like a month and a half. And yeah, and I have been feeling much, much better. I am not on a stimulant. So we did not go the stimulant route, just with my health concerns, and also, sort of my history of anxiety and all of that, we decided that we didn't want to go that route. And after a little bit of adjustment of my dosage, I've been feeling much better. My memory is starting to get a lot better. My focus has gotten a lot better, so much better. And yeah, and I just feel like I can be normal again, which is really great. So I think that, those of us that suffer with mental health, we kind of know usually when like kind of one thing rectifies itself or becomes better, other symptoms can become worse. And that's kind of where I was with my anxiety, which I speak a lot about here on the channel and I'm open with you all about, but also then with my ADHD. So a lot of stuff has been happening over the last few months. And I guess the last bit of big news, which will ultimately affect the channel, which I'm going to talk about later on, is also the fact that I have decided to go back to school to pursue my postgraduate degree. So I will be pursuing a master's degree in industrial and organizational psychology. And I'm really, really excited about that. I start classes in the fall. I'm going to register now in the next 2 weeks for fall classes. So I'm really excited. And yeah, and so, I think that we hit a little bit of a rough spot there, as we all are wont to do, as kind of life gets in the way, and we're back on track, and exploring new things, and super excited for what is to come in the future. So I guess it's a little bit of a life update, not sure how long I was speaking for, but yeah, it's hopefully that it kind of explains where I was and kind of where I needed to be with my headspace. And then, with everything, I think also, getting back to the podcast and getting back in the swing of filming is definitely going to be interesting, because it definitely was one of those situations where I had meant to actually film last weekend, and I just kept putting it off because I think like once you stop something, it's so much harder to start. So I'm really excited that I was able to sit down today and sit in front of the camera and chat with you all. So with that, I will transition to what I'm wearing today, which is the Springline tee by Samantha Guerin. And as always, I am sitting very close to the camera, so I will put in some pictures of my finished object here for you all to see. And this is the first FO of the episode and a project spotlight. This is a pattern that I tested for Sam back in May. It was released actually, I think on May 1st, if I recall correctly. And yeah, I mean, I just love everything about it. I'm really excited to be wearing it. I've worn it a few times already. And this is one of the ones that when I finished it, like even my mom was like, oh my God, that looks so good on you. I love it. And I'm really excited about this tee and an opportunity to test for Sam again. So in terms of the tee itself, and as you know, as you see me looking down, as always, I'm looking at my notes. It is a drop shoulder construction, and so it has this lace panel that goes down from the shoulder all the way down to the hem ribbing of the t-shirt, both down the front and to the back. And it is just, you know, a boxy kind of oversized fit, and it's really great, you know, kind of like your typical drop shoulder top down construction. You start with the back, you pick up for the fronts, you join the front, then you join the body, and you work your way all the way down until you're done. The sleeves are simply, because it's a drop shoulder, you simply just pick up and do your ribbing for the sleeves, and then you're done. So easy peasy, lemon squeezy. You can, you know, whip up a tee in about 2 weeks, probably, I would say. And you have something that is super versatile and ready to be worn all summer long. So, you know, we're kind of, it's funny because when you think of, like, I'm filming this on July 5th, so 4th of July was yesterday. We have a long weekend here in the US. And when you think of summer, I'm kind of already starting to think about like my fall knits, right? Because knitting does take a while. And I actually am going to be test knitting and sample knitting fall and winter projects. So, you know, my brain as a tester, as a sample knitter, is already in the fall and winter. But you know, July, especially here in the Northeast, we still have a good 3 months of summer left. Because usually we're feeling it, at least here in New Jersey where I am, up until October. You know, we've had like Halloweens where people can, like, you know, go out in like shorts and a tank top, which is like funny because October is like such a transitional month for us. It's like Halloween could either be snowing or it could be like 80 degrees where I live. So it's very interesting. But yeah, with that said, even though I'm kind of already thinking about fall, and you'll see by what I'm working on that I'm already thinking about fall, you still have plenty of summer left to be able to knit this up because it did work up so quickly. In terms of the yarn that I used Woolly Knit 4-ply cotton. It's a 100% unmercerized cotton, and it is one of their cones, and it is in the color navy blue. I think I had picked this up a couple of years ago when Bethany of Well Love Knits had the summer cone along with them. So I want to say it's been in my stash for about 2 years before I finally knit it up. And I made the size 5, which corresponds to a 40-inch bust, or 48-inch bust, which is about 2 inches of positive ease for me. And I used 184 grams or 945 yards for this. So pretty, you know, if you have like 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn, this would be great for like those like hand-dyed skeins that you might have in your stash that you don't necessarily know what to do with, that you maybe like purchase one off to be able to knit something up really quickly and really beautifully in those yarns. And then in terms of my modifications, I actually worked a smaller armhole, which was not an intentional modification. I think when Sam had originally provided us the test, she had a shorter armhole depth in the pattern, and some of the testers found that it was too short. I personally am quite petite. In the upper body, my lower body, I have very long legs, but my upper body is quite petite. So I actually found the shallower armhole to be much more comfortable for me, especially for a summer garment. I kind of like them to be closer to my underarms because, you know, I don't like to feel myself sweating. So it does have a shallower armhole than what was published in the final pattern. And I think that she only really increased the armhole maybe by like something like 1/2 inch to 1 inch across the various sizes. So it's not like super, super significant. I think I would have maybe only worked one more repeat of the pattern, which is a 6-row pattern, in order to get like the longer armhole for my size. So since I had already been past that, she said it was okay for us to just continue if we felt that the armhole was fine for us, which I did. And then I did end up lengthening the body by 1 inch. And this was kind of more one of kind of like my own thing. As you all know, if you follow the podcast, I typically put in bust darts into my garments that have a less positive ease. And that is because I'm very busty. And when I got to that point, I was just kind of like on a roll. I was kind of just like, didn't want to deal with it. And I was like, it'll be fine. It's a summer garment. It can be cropped. I'm not going to wear it to work anyway because it is lacy and I wouldn't wear this to my office. So I was like, it's going to be fine. And then when I got to the length, I think I had just reached my belly button and I was like, well, this is a little more cropped than I wanted it to be. So I did end up adding 1 inch of length to the body, just to, you know, give me a little bit more room in the front. And I think that that's perfect when I wear it with my high-waisted linen pants that I wear in the summer. It just covers my pants, kind of the waistband. And so it is cropped. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think that's all I have to really say about it. I've worn it quite a few times. I've gotten complimented every single time I've worn it, and absolutely recommend the pattern if you are looking for a quick summer tee to knit up. And so now we get into the rest of the finished objects for this podcast. And so the first item that I have to show you all is the April cardigan by Petite Knit. And this is what it looks like. It is black. So it is a little hard to see, but this is what it looks like. I hope you can see that. It is just a a V-neck cardigan, pretty simple shape. Part of the reason why I went with this particular pattern is because it does have a contiguous construction. So you start from the top and it's a top down, and then with your increases, you have that saddle shoulder into the sort of shaped cap sleeve, cap of the sleeve cap, and then into the body. And so I was looking for an everyday cardigan that I could wear, you know, buttoned, unbuttoned, over dresses, over pants, to work casually. And that's kind of why I chose this one. I do have an episode of the podcast where I kind of go through my process of choosing patterns and kind of why I chose this one a little bit more. And another reason why I liked it is because it's a pattern that is boxy in the bottom, in the body, I should say, and slim in the sleeves. I don't like to have, or I shouldn't say I don't like to have, I don't always like to have lots of volume in my sleeves, especially for a more kind of, you know, classic tailored look. I was really looking for something that, you know, someone would not know, like, that I actually made this. and it is very much like, I don't think that you would know that this isn't store-bought, other than the fact that it fits me so well. And yeah, I actually also picked up some buttons from Pigeon Wishes, which I know my friend Marlene loves their buttons, and that's kind of where I decided to pick up some buttons. And so they're just like a very light kind of purpley mauvey tortoiseshell, and I just thought that that gave it like a very classic look. Instead of having just plain black buttons, it gave it a little bit extra, without being kind of looking weird or anything like that. So in terms of the sizing, I went with a size 6 for this one, which is a 50-inch finished bust, so 4 inches of positive ease across the body, or the bust I should say. But again, this does have a slimmer fit tapered sleeve, which is what I was really looking for. I did get gauge. I think the pattern recommended a US 5, but I actually went down to a US 6. I went down to a US 5, which is a 3.75 millimeter needle as my main needle. And the yarn I used for this was also stash yarn, so you're gonna kind of find this common theme. I am using quite a bit of stash yarn, and I'm trying to really be cognizant of that, especially as I think about the fact that we're going to be going to flock in a couple months, or in a month now. I used a woolly knit British wool in the color jet black. So I had a cone of that from a couple years ago. And then I also had Drops Kid Silk in, excuse me, in the color 2, which is just called black. And so those are both yarns that I had in my stash for quite some time. I had actually purchased them for a different project that I had in mind, and ultimately never knit. And then when I was thinking about wanting a classic black cardigan, decided that this would be the perfect yarn pairing for that. In terms of my modifications, I did shorten the sleeves and the body, which is a very common modification for me. If you have been a viewer for a while, you know I am only 4'11", so and I carry most of my height in my lower body. So I did modify that. And the other major modification that I did was, this pattern calls for a 1x1 rib button band, and I actually decided to go with a double knit button band. So it would give it that cleaner kind of store-bought look. And so I worked a 15 stitch double knit button band, which I think, you know, there are tons of different tutorials for a double knit button band out there. I have knit a couple of patterns before with double knit button bands, and I kind of just pulled them up. And actually the pattern that I used, just for reference in terms of just measuring everything out, because I didn't want to think about it too much, was the first cardigan, which I tested for Lizzie Hester of Hive Knits a couple years ago. And so I just pulled that pattern up really quickly just to kind of get a gauge of how I wanted to space my buttons out. And then I followed those instructions for the double knit button band. But there's tons of tutorials on YouTube and things like that. If you didn't have a pattern with a double knit button band already kind of built into the pattern, and you wanted to go ahead and make that modification for yourself. But I love the way that it fits. It fits absolutely perfectly as I knit it every step of the way, and I kept doing fit check pictures. It just fits so perfectly every step of the way, and it is one that I took my time really checking the fit over and over and over to make sure that I got it where I wanted it to be. And I've received tons of compliments from it, actually, once people realize that I knit it, because most people have not realized that I knit this cardigan myself, which, you know, I mean, I don't necessarily want to be someone who knits things that look like they could be store bought, right? But I think that that is a compliment to, the time that I took and the kind of style choices that I made when knitting the cardigan that, most people wouldn't think that it's a hand knit cardigan. So absolutely love it. I have worn it a bunch. I've worn it to death. I actually am still wearing it to the office, even though we've been getting quite a bit of heat, because the office is always cold. So I, commute in with my summer dresses and I pop it on over my summer dresses when I'm in the office. So it's been such a versatile item, and definitely think that I will be making another one in the future. So next up, I have finished a pair of vanilla socks, and these have appeared on the podcast before. And yeah, so this is what they look like, all finished up and blocked. And I won't go into too much detail because I kind of talk about my sock recipe over and over every month. But this is just a vanilla sock recipe, my own recipe. It's a 64 stitch sock. It has cat hair all over it. I use a US 1 or 2.25 millimeter needle to knit my socks, and it's knit in a flat rib across the leg. And then the top of the foot, the bottom of the foot is stockinette. And for this particular pair, I did a slip stitch reinforced heel flap and gusset. And yeah, that's really all I have to say about that one because it is a vanilla sock. And all of the details of how I knit my socks, I've been making sure to outline them in my Ravelry, so that more so for me, so that I know when I want to go back, and then also just in case you want to take a look at how I knit up a particular pair of vanilla socks, but kind of use the same recipe and then change up a few things here and there, like the rib or anything like that, with each pair that I knit. So the next finished item that I have is a small fry scarf by Samantha Guerin. And so if you watched the last podcast, you know that that was a pattern that I test knit for Sam, and I decided to make a second one. And I'm going to hold it up, and I'm going to warn you that it's red, and the camera picks this red up so bright. I mean, it is bright red, but whenever it is on camera, it's like pretty electric. Yeah. Like the camera like really just crazily saturates this red. And yeah, so let me see if I can get a little closer so you can see the details on that. And again, I think you're not really going to be able to see that well because unfortunately the camera has some issues kind of focusing on this red. But this is a tiny scarf. As you can see, it's just a tiny little scarf that you can like wrap around your neck when you need a little bit of extra warmth. It's a beautiful slip stitch pattern that is used throughout, so there is no purling. It is a garter stitch slip stitch pattern, and what to say, I used size 2.5 or 3 millimeter needles, and I used a North Bay Fiber Heritage Sport in the color Holly. And so this is actually one of my acquisitions that I've had since the last podcast episode. Sam had I really wanted a red one after seeing a few folks knitting up red ones after I knit my kind of more muted beige one. And Sam had a skein of this in her stash, and she said, I'll send it to you. You'll just need to get a second one. And so I ordered the second one and I knit up the scarf, and I'm really excited about it. And I did wear it a few times. I managed to finish it before it got too warm, and I was able to wear it a couple of times just to have a little bit of a pop of color in my outfits. And the last finished object that I have for you all is completely finished, however has not been blocked. I do not have FO pictures. I do plan on blocking it today after I'm done filming this episode, and I don't know that I'll have FO actually no, I won't have FO pictures to include in this podcast episode, but you will be able, like always, I've linked to my Ravelry project pages. You'll be able to see them in my Ravelry project pages because I plan on taking FO pictures on Sunday, which is when this episode goes live. And all that to say, I have finished my Slightly Sassy V by Amy Sher. And let's see, this is what it looks like. So yeah, really excited to have finished this one. This is one of the ones that I finished and kind of just, unfortunately, when I got into my funk, not only did I not knit, but I also just didn't do anything. So even though I finished this one, it hasn't been blocked. I finished this back in May, and I do think I still need to weave in some ends. So yeah, so this one will be blocked and I'll have pictures up after this episode goes live, but I managed to finish this one. In terms of the sizing, I use my typical Amy Sher Make size, which is the D or the 4th size, and that corresponds to a 41-inch upper bust. I got gauge on the recommended needle, which is a US 4 or 3.5 millimeter needle, and I use Wool Dreamers Saona in the color Groen, which was kindly gifted by Amy, just, you know, with no obligation to post or share or anything like that, but it is something that a yarn that she gifted me when the shop went live. So I'm really excited to have knit this. In terms of modifications, as always, I usually knit cup size 2, which is a 2-inch bust dart. And I did lengthen the sleeve a little bit by about 1/2 inch before the ribbing. And then, as always, I did shorten the body a little bit because, you know, I'm short. So I'm really excited to get this blocked up. The yarn was absolutely amazing to knit with. I don't know what I was expecting from a 50-50 wool cotton blend, but it was just really, really wonderful to knit with. I will say, because I use sharp needles, it did get a little splitty at times, but if you just keep an eye on that, it was really wonderful to knit with. It had a very dry hand, and I'm really excited to wear my tee. Okay, I had to take a little bit of a break because the camera was heating up, and I went ahead and changed my battery, made myself another drink, and we are ready to move on to the works in progress. So I have 3 works in progress to share with you all this month. One of them is acquired yarn and 2 of them are stash yarn. So we can go ahead and get started with the first one, which I have in this like little bucket. So it's actually quite wrinkly, and you'll see why when you see the yarn. And I actually have it on a cord right now because 2 of the projects I'm working on are both using size 4 needles. And let's open her up. This is the Avani shirt by Kadri. And it is just a tank, a sleeveless tank with these I-cord edgings along the V-neck and the sleeves. And I believe that there's an I-cord edging around the bottom, if I remember correctly. And this is yarn that I picked up when I was in Salt Lake City at Siege Stitch. And the yarn is Sednisgarn Tinlina. So I'm really excited. When I was there, I picked up 4 of these, actually initially thinking that I might be able to use them for a second Slightly Sassy V. I knew that it was a little bit of a long shot because this is a little thinner than the Wool Dreamers, and so the Slightly Sassy V, I believe, has a gauge of 24 stitches, to 4 inches, and this one has a gauge of 26 stitches to 4 inches. So when I did my gauge swatch and I knew I wasn't getting gauge on for the Slightly Sassy, I had had my eye on this pattern since Sabina had put out the test knit when it first went live. I think it's been out for like a year now. And I had actually, funny enough, intended to use this yarn that I used for my Springline tee to make the Avani, and I just never worked out. I never got around to it. And so finally, when I was like, okay, well, now I have 4 of these balls of the Tinlina, what am I going to do with them? I remembered this pattern, and I knew that I had a slightly smaller gauge, and so I decided to cast on. So this is what that looks like. I don't think it's focusing for some reason, but when I was there, I was like shocked by how inexpensive this yarn is, that I just couldn't not get it. And so this is, again, it's Sadness Garn Tinlina in the colorway, let's see, it's 4335, which is called Raspberry Cream. And this is a 53% cotton, 33% viscose, 14% linen. So, I mean, I personally think that calling it linen is a little bit of a stretch, but you know, it does have linen in it. And this yarn has been absolutely amazing to knit with. It is so nice to knit with. It is so soft. And yeah, so, I actually went ahead and did the I-cord for the V-neck and the sleeves because I was thinking that the sleeves and V-neck might be too wide. And so what I did for that was I actually modified the pickup rate. The pattern calls a 1-to-1 pickup rate for both the V-neck and the sleeves, and I did a 2-to-3 instead. And then once I did that, I was able to try it on as I went to determine where I wanted to insert my bust darts. And so that is another modification that I'm making to the pattern, is I am inserting a 2-inch bust dart to that. And I can kind of walk through all of the rest of my modifications once this is finished. So at this point, there's only a little bit left. You know, I just have to really do the body and the hem, but I kind of got a little bored of the stockinette, so I've put it to the side for now, and that's why it's on a cord. And I cast it on for something else that is also using my size 4 needles, which I will show you next. So the next work in progress that I have to show you all is the Cardi Jumper by Vere Knit, Inez of Vere Knit, and it's not looking like much. This is one of those patterns that until you kind of have a little bit of progress on it, you can't really tell what's going on. But it is a worked top down in one piece. It is a drop shoulder. I am knitting the Marinaire version, which has stripes. So you can knit 2 versions. One version does not have stripes. The other version has stripes. And the unstriped version, I believe, has an I-cord edging all the way around with very tiny buttons. And the Marinaire version has a double knit button band, still small buttons, but it is a double knit instead of an I-cord, if I remember correctly. And so yeah, this is my next cardigan. We are on a cardigan kick, although I haven't been knitting as much on this one once I kind of joined for the body. I've found recently that I kind of need a little bit more than just plain stockinette. I'm kind of to the point where my brain is kind of stressed and things. And usually when I'm like stressed out or I'm overthinking or I feel like a little kind of, you know, overstimulated, I like to just knit stockinette. But I found recently that I need a little bit more detail to kind of calm my brain down. And so once I kind of got over the intricacy and kind of the newness of the construction, I kind of got a little bit bored with it when I joined in the round. So I've just been knitting it a little bit here and there during meetings. and this is what it's looking like. For this one, I am using Woolly Knit British Wool, which again is stash yarn. This is the 4-ply, and the main color I'm using is the color Harvest, and then the stripes are in the color Jet Black. So I had quite a bit left. I think over 100 grams left of the black color. Let me actually see. I have it right here. Yeah, it's 195.6, and I think each cone weighs like about 40 grams. So about 150 grams of the black left. So I still have quite a bit, and I'll still have quite a bit after this is done. But I'm loving how it's turning out so far. What to say about this one? I am knitting it on US size 4, which is 3.5 millimeter needles. I am making the 8th size, which is a finished bust of 52 inches. And yeah, I'm going to try to follow the same measurements for this one as I did for my April cardigan in terms of lengths and everything, because I think that I really like how that one fits me in terms of length and everything. Although this is drop shoulder, so once I finish the body, I actually am planning on blocking it, because drop shoulder always, when it comes to sleeves, if you don't block your shoulder first, your sleeve, obviously it's going to affect the length of your sleeve because the shoulder will ultimately drop a little bit further. So once I finish the body, I do plan on doing the button band and then blocking it and then doing my sleeves so that I can get the right length for sleeves, because otherwise I feel like if I don't do that, I end up with like really long sleeves, which is not a big deal because you can just rip them back and, you know, redo them. But whenever possible, it's nice to avoid that. And so my last work in progress that I have to show you all today is my book club cardigan by Sari Nordland. And I am absolutely in love. This is the pattern that I've been working on pretty nonstop because I actually find this to be quite easy. I think that so I've already memorized the cable repeat, and it's a really easy cable repeat to memorize. You're not cabling every row. It's a very simple cable repeat to memorize. And because of the moss stitch, you're not working in like that kind of stockinette flat, even though you are still working probably the same number of knits and purls, you're not working in stockinette flat. So I've actually found that this has been perfect for those times that I kind of just need my brain to quiet down a bit. And so I have obviously finished the back, and then I, did the fronts. I joined the body, and this is 2 balls of the yarn that I am using. So I've just finished the second ball of yarn, which, where's my end? It's over here somewhere. So I've just finished the second ball of yarn, and I kind of just took pictures of this. So the yarn that I am using for this is also stash yarn. It's Wool Dreamers Moda in the color 246. And this is yarn that I picked up at Woolen Folk in the fall of 2023. So I'm really excited. I have been able to work with a lot of stash yarn over the past couple of months, and I think that is reflected in my numbers because I've also purchased a bit of yarn. So I've been able to get rid of, quite a bit of stash yarn. This was stash yarn. My April cardigan was stash yarn. Both of these cardigans are stash yarn, so I'm really excited to be able to work that up. And then I have been trying to work up any souvenir yarn that I've been buying pretty quickly. So, I bought the yarn for the Tin Lena, and I pretty much cast it on pretty quickly. And yeah, so I'm really excited to be able to work through some of my stash yarn, work through some projects that have been also in my stash or my library for a while. So I'm really happy to be able to get some, some yarn out, reuse some projects, or, knit some projects that have been in my stash for a while, in my library for a while, and really excited about that. So acquisitions. Acquisitions, I do have a few things to show you, but in terms of acquisitions from the Lost podcast, the North Bay fiber that I used for the red small fry scarf was an acquisition. I also did have some acquisitions from our Toronto trip, so if you have not viewed that vlog, I'll go ahead and post it here. But I had picked up some knitting for olive, heavy merino, and the soft silk, as well as some Isayer, like a fingering weight. I think it was like maybe alpaca 3, and with the Isayer mohair as well. So if you're interested in checking out that vlog, I'll have linked that for you. And then other than that, as I mentioned, I went out to Salt Lake City and I was able to get together with Megan and Aro while I was out there for the conference. And Aro graciously drove me around on the last day that I was there in the morning and took me yarn shopping. And so I got to go to Seed Stitch in Utah and picked up a few things. So as I mentioned, I did pick up the Tin Lena. I just, saw it and I wanted to try it. So I picked that up and it was so inexpensive. But I did also try, as you all know, I'm trying to not buy tons of yarn. So souvenir yarn is okay, is part of the rules I can buy, I guess. But I also wanted it to, always with a project in mind, of course. And then I also wanted, to have some local yarn, especially because I was going to Utah. And Seed Stitch carries this local hand dyer called the Backcountry Knitter. And so I picked up a few skeins, probably a little bit more than I should have. I actually, at the airport, I had some room in my luggage because, I was going for a work conference, so I kind of didn't pack tons. And I knew that I was also going to go yarn shopping. So I did have some room in my luggage, and I was in the airport sort of packing everything up last minute. And so I'll insert a picture of that here. It was pretty funny. I went to the conference with my boss, and my boss was just like, oh my God, like, how did you fit all of that in there? But I did plan for this. But the first yarn that I got from the Backcountry Knitter is their Merino DK, which is just 100% superwash merino. And this is the color Brick. And so it is hand dyed in Salt Lake City. And so this is the color Brick. It is showing up a little bit more saturated on the camera, at least as I'm seeing it now. Sometimes in post-production, it's not as bad. But yeah, it's just a beautiful, beautiful autumnal color, which you all know. These are my colors. I picked up 5 skeins 5 skeins. Picked up 5 skeins, and the plan is to make the Salty Air sweater by Samantha Guerin with this yarn. I just saw the yarn and immediately I was like, that's what that yarn is for. And then I picked up some sock yarn because, of course, you know, that is what you must do. And this is just called the 2-ply sock, and it's an 85-15 merino and nylon. And so in the colors Desert Rainbow and Horizon. And so I thought that these colors went really well together. So Desert Rainbow is on top, Horizon is on bottom. And I thought that these just went really well together. So I can probably get, I will get 2 pairs of socks out of this. So I'm planning on doing some kind of like, I don't know yet, but I have plans for this. And yeah, I'm really excited. I just love the colors. And yeah, it just reminded me of the desert. And even though I didn't get to go out to the desert while I was there this time around, I'm very familiar with the desert in that area, having, you know, gone out to that area, you know, like the Arizona, the Utah area before. So really excited about this yarn. It's really beautiful. And as I'm setting up my new office and studio, I actually have an IKEA pegboard where I have some of my special hand-dyed sock yarn hanging up. And so I've really enjoyed just being able to see them there as I work and as I sew and do other things. So yeah, those are the acquisitions for this month. So in terms of making plans, I don't have too many. I think that the past couple of months have really shown me that I need to kind of slow down and not put as much pressure on myself, and not sort of impose as many deadlines on myself as I'm used to. And so I really don't have much. I mean, I do have obviously these whips, and you know, if they get done, they get done. That's great. I mentioned I do have a test knit and a sample knit, and both of those I think are due in like the first week of September, like right after Labor Day. So that's going to be what I'm working on primarily throughout the summer. The test knit I will be able to show you all. It is for Amy Scher's latest pattern, which is essentially it's the fall winter version of the Slightly Sassy V. I believe they're calling it the Hibernate, but if they're not, I'll, you know, correct myself here. And so I have that test, and I'm trying to decide if I'm going to use stash yarn. I have a couple things that I could use, but have very clear visions for. Like, actually, this is one of the yarns that I could potentially use for that knit, but I very much envision this yarn as a different project. So I'm not sure if I'm going to use stash yarn that I have. I do have a couple of things that I could potentially use, or if I'm going to buy something from their shop, because there is a, you know, kind of 20% discount for yarn support for testers. So I might do that for this test knit. And then I do have a sample for Barocco that is coming in the mail in the next couple of weeks. So, you know, hoping to take it a little slower this summer. I am going to have a very busy July at work, and then we are traveling in August for about 2 weeks to go out to flock. And so I don't want to like overstress myself. So really, really excited about that. And I guess that kind of leads us into a channel update. So as you all know, I do try to get out 2 videos per month, and actually for the next couple of months, you will actually get 2 videos. a month because I do have a sewing podcast that's going to go up after this video. So that's going to be my second video in July. In August, I'll have a vlog from Flock. In September, I'm planning on having another sewing podcast, and then in October we'll have Rhinebeck weekend. So from now until October, you will see me putting out those 2 videos per month. But I do want to say long term, and if you missed the life update, I am going back to school, right? So the next 3 years, and I'm actually going to be in a very intensive program. And so the next 3 years are going to be dedicated to school. And, you know, the knitting might not be as much. So I think my monthly podcast works because I have enough to show you on a monthly basis. And that makes sense. But in terms of, you know, sort of filming more often, not sure that I'll be able to do that in terms of a sit down style. So that to say, you will continue to see the monthly podcast episodes from me, and then likely any additional videos that come, unless it's like a sewing podcast, will be vlog style. So not as much sit down content unless I find pockets of time where I can sit down and sort of film more of those like knit and chats or commentaries, because I do like filming those commentaries, but they usually take a lot more research. I need to sit down, I need to research, I need to gather my thoughts, and I need to make sure that I'm putting something sort of cogent out for you all to be able to follow along with. So in the immediate future, you're not going to see any changes. You're not going to feel any changes, but you are going to, you know, or you're not going to see any changes in terms of the number of videos that I'm putting out, but you will feel the changes in terms of, you know, we're really only talking about 1 sit down video per month, not as much of the commentary type of videos from here on out, at least for, you know, the foreseeable future, since I will be in school. Okay, and so now we've arrived at the numbers. Since I have April, May, June's worth of numbers to share with you all, I'm just going to do a recap of my numbers year to date. I'll still have all of my numbers up on the screen for you all using my template that I've been using for the past couple of months. But in April, I came in the negative by quite a bit because I finished the bigger projects all using stash yarn. And then in May, I came in the positive by quite a bit because I only finished the Slightly Sassy V and I bought all of the Salt Lake City yarn. And then in June, I was 0. So I didn't buy any yarn. I didn't finish any projects. I didn't knit at all in June, actually. So I'm still negative for the year. And I'm hoping that if I do get to finish a couple of things before we go to Flock, that I will be enough in the negative that whatever I buy at Flock won't be too big of a deal. Because again, I am knitting primarily from stash yarn or recent acquisitions. So yeah. So looking at the numbers year to date and so as a reminder, the in category is going to include any yarn that I've purchased, as well any yarn that I destashed will be in the negative from that in number. And the total year to date is 8,832 yards. My out category is only yarn that I have knit up. And again, I only count that once I've actually finished the project. So for instance, the projects that I'm working on so far, I haven't counted any of that yarn toward the out category. And so far, I've knit up 8,890 yards worth of yarn. And that brings me to a negative 58 yards for the year. So making it by the skin of my teeth, but I'm still making it. I'm still in the negative, which was my ultimate goal for the year, was to have a net negative. And yeah. This was a long one, so I will not have a Loving My Stash episode this or segment this episode, and that was also purposeful. I wanted to prioritize sitting down and getting the episode out rather than sort of researching, because I do research for those a little bit, and so I wanted to prioritize getting it out for you all. So we will have Loving My Stash segment in the next month's episode, and so I'll leave that here because I'm sure I've sort of filmed in a few segments, but I'm sure we're way over an hour at this point. So thanks so much for sticking around. I want to thank you all. I just realized that I did not start the podcast, which I meant to start the podcast with a huge thank you for 4,000 subscribers. We're just over 4,000 now. But in my sort of absence, we reached 4,000 subscribers. So I'm so thankful to all of you that are here, that continue to watch the podcasts and engage with my content, both here on Instagram. I'm so close to 4,000 on Instagram. So if you're not following me there, be sure to do so. But yeah, thank you all for your support. Thank you for sticking around, even though I kind of was MIA, no pun intended, for a few months there, and for always being understanding of everything that I had going on in my life, and really engaging with me and my content. And you know, we've really formed a community, and you know, a lot of you all comment repeatedly, and we have sort of these conversations ongoing episode after episode. Want to thank my friends who are so supportive of me, and especially those that continue to always, you know, sort of mention me, like Marlene and Haley and Becky and Casey, all of you guys. But, you know, we're all such really great friends, you know, sort of on and off these various platforms, and they're always encouraging me and always also highlighting my episode on their podcasts. So really appreciate that. And, you know, I don't take that for granted, to have so many of you all along for this ride. And can't believe I forgot to start the episode off with this big thank you. So hopefully the majority of you have sat through and watched this far, to see this. And yeah, I don't take it lightly that you all come back repeatedly over and over, and I'm really excited to see where we take this community in the future. So I will leave you all here. As I mentioned, my next episode is going to be a sewing podcast. I know not all of you are here for the sewing content, which is why I like to break those out. So if you're not here for the sewing content, I will see you next month in the next podcast. Otherwise, if you love both, I will see you in 2 weeks' time. And I hope that you're taking care of yourselves, your loved ones, and each other. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.